In this tutorial, we're going to take a deep dive walkthrough of the evaluation node code, the Snappy script that's running on the nodes of the Arrow M2M kit brought to you by Synapse and Exosite. The first thing you notice in the snap code, if you're familiar with snap code, is we have some imports, some files that we're going to go ahead and import the function libraries that we're going to use and call later in the routines. So we have the imports up at the top. Then we have some global variables that we're going to set. One of them being the CIK number, which is the unique identifier for this particular node in the Exosite system. We also have a place for holding that parameter inside of the NV parameters, and we also have a place for holding the gateway address inside of the NV parameters. You'll notice that we have something called the vendor ID, and we set it to Synapse. Now this vendor ID is used in the Exosite system to identify the particular domain that this board is going to be identified with inside of the Exosite portals. We also have the model ID, and this identifies the model inside of that domain. So these two variables are ones that you would use if you wanted to move this board to a different domain and have a different model ID. You would just go ahead and set these parameters to whatever that vendor ID is and whatever that model ID is, and then your board would try to provision to that new domain under the new model number. The portal address is the hard-coded portal address for portal running on your PC or Mac, and that's just to output any of the log files so that you can see what's going on as the node's running. The next step here is we'll get down to the pin definitions. So there's three different pin definitions in here: the RF100, RF300 or 301, and the RF200. Each node, each type has different mappings for the GPIOs, so we set this table up to have a pin definition to allow you to quickly identify which snap node is installed on the breakout board, and then adjust the GPIOs accordingly, the GPIO mappings. So this section, you can go ahead and set your mappings for what you want your GPIOs to have in the different snap node modules. And then you can customize it to your application. Once we've defined our pins, we can start looking at the first function that we have called hook startup. The snap nodes, when they first boot, will run this function just one time. And it's used to set up variables and things for how you want them to look on the system during that first time config. The first thing we check inside of this code is if we're paired to a gateway yet or not. So as we come through the code, you're going to see that we're going to look and find out if we have a gateway that we're already paired to. If we do have that gateway, we're going to go ahead and save that gateway into the gateway address variable. If we don't have a gateway that we're paired to, we're going to go ahead and try and find the gateway that is up and running for us to start talking to Exosite. So we're going to run this MCAST RPC, which broadcasts out looking for a node that's running Exosite pair, and your E10 is the one that's going to be running the Exosite pair function. So you're going to send that call out and see if anybody's out there that's going to respond to it. The response function for Exosite pair is down lower and is called the pair node function, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So it's going to throw this function out there, see if someone's got it. If somebody does have that function, they're going to return the function pair node with the gateway address and give us a gateway address later on. Next, we're going to look to see if we already have a CIK number in our NV parameters. If we do, we're going to go ahead and load that into the CIK variable in our node. If we do not, then we're going to go ahead and call another function out on the network called Exosite provision. Again, this is a function inside of the E10. This function takes in a couple of parameters, including this vendor ID and model ID that we talked about up at the top of the page, which were variables that could be assigned to change the domain and the model ID to customize your system. Because we're also calling an MCAST RPC, we will also get the MAC address for this particular node in the E10. The E10 will then do a function call up to Exosite's platform with that vendor ID, the model ID, and the MAC address. And if those three things line up inside of a provisioned device, then the E10 will then call provision node function back on the node here, and that's where it will provide the CIK number to this node. Next, we're going to go ahead and set up some parameters of the board, the LEDs, some of the pin directions. Again, this is all stuff you want to do one time as you set it up. And then, as long as our CIK is not empty, we're going to go ahead and do an exosite write to the platform. We're going to do an MCAST here, so we're not dependent on knowing that gateway address. And we're going to go ahead and do an exosite write, which on the E10 is going to have a function called exosite write, which takes in the variables CIK, which is the unique identifier for this node, the status, which is the alias to the data source that we want to write to, and restart, which is the value that we want to write to that data source. So we're going to call exosite write with the CIK, the alias, and the value, and then we're going to go ahead and exit out of that function.